This is Together, an Ada Bible Church podcast about the world of marriage, where we attempt to invite you to explore the ways marriage works and doesn't work. From practical ways of learning to biblical inspiration, we invite you to listen to other professionals and couples to help enrich your marriage. Here are your hosts, Rachel Norton and Dr. Kelly Bonwell.
So, Rachel.
Hi, Kelly.
Good to see you today.
Yes, I'm excited to share this time with you today and with our friends who are here.
Yeah, we got a surprise for our listeners. Today, as I was driving in, I was kind of taken aback because over the night, tons of trees budded new life. And the theme for this season is new life, of God bringing new life. And that is a big theme that we're going to talk about today. We're going to interview Jim and Sharon McFarland. I had the privilege, and so did you, of working with Jim for quite a few years, and he's since retired, but he'll get to tell more of that story. How do you know Jim and Sharon?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. When I was new on staff, I got to meet with the people who were already on the leader team, and one of my first meetings was with Sharon. And that's where we got to step into your story. And I fell for Jim before I met him and found out he was my coworker. So we learned a lot about just God's redemptive story in your life and in your life as a couple. And so we're excited to have you here on the podcast today. Now, Sharon, I know you are a retired teacher.
Yes.
And Jim, you used to be in sales.
I did.
And yet you found your way to the pastoral staff at Ada Bible at one point. Oh. But this is our opportunity to just hear more about you. Tell us about you. Tell us about your family.
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. Well, I raised in a Christian family in the Detroit area in Farmington Hills. Family, this is my second marriage. And it's been really an interesting time because I was married for 42 years to Karen, and we went through a 9-year ovarian cancer journey. And it was pretty hard time, but I have 4 kids between the two of us. 2 on my side. It would be son Dave and daughter Jennifer, and Dave's in town with 3 grandkids, and Jennifer's in Cleveland, Tennessee, where she recently retired from the police force.
Wow!
And we are excited that she's out of that that area.
And when the kids start retiring, that's a thing.
Well, she's more transition.
Exactly. This transition.
Maybe a better term.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Into real estate with Keller Williams, and so we're really liking that.
Sharon, how about you?
Well, I was born in the Detroit area and raised there in a wonderful Christian family. The only rose among the thorns, as they said, with 3 brothers. And we had a wonderful growing up life. Ended up after college teaching in middle school and high school English for 26 years, both Christian school and public school.
Well, Sharon, you think of the number of lives you got to touch during those years.
I thought of myself as just a piece of the puzzle of their lives, so that was a privilege. And I have, as Jim said, 2 children. And together, Jim and I now have 9 grandchildren.
Yes, which we love.
Yeah, and we do. That's a big part of our lives. I have a son in town with a wonderful wife and 3 children. They attend Knapp campus, Ada Bible, and Wes. And I have a daughter in Texas, married with a child. So we keep busy seeing our daughters out of town and our sons and their families in town.
Well, and I know grandkids are a huge part of your life, but I know serving is too, and volunteering. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I can start, I guess. We lead a couple small group together. We co-lead it, and there's 14 in our group. We absolutely love this small group. I also lead a men's group. I have a guy that I mentor, a Calvin student. Love doing that. And kind of organically when, situations arise, we kind of move into those to care for people and direct them and just kind of assist them in their spiritual journeys and what they're experiencing.
How about Sharon?
Well, I've done a lot of volunteering, of course, too. Back in the day, Pioneer Girls and choirs and stuff like that. And as Rachel mentioned, I've been involved in Thrive, co-leading for quite a few years, and with Jim and the couples group. And then I volunteer, get women together to go to PRC, Pregnancy Resource Center, and do work there. Usually once a month we do that. And then I visit a few people regularly on my own personal care list. So it's good.
Well, and Kelly, didn't you say there was kind of a story about how Jim went from sales to staff?
Yeah, I want to hear about that one. I don't know that story. Why don't you share a few words about that, about how you made that transition?
I did a lot of volunteer work in small groups and coaching and leading and so forth. And I just had this passion, and I just felt God's Spirit pushing on me and pushing on me and pushing on me. And then I was trying to investigate, well, what does this look like? And it was kind of wild as I was leading a small group and doing some coaching of other small group leaders when I met with Phil Niekirk. We were at a restaurant, and I kind of rolled out my heart to him, and it's very cool how it all transpired and how it just happened. And he after I rolled out some detail, he says, "Jim," he says, that's where I kind of chuckled and said, "That's where I was way back." And he said, "And I want you to know, when I went back to the office," he said, "I was talking to Sam Tawney, and Sam asked how the lunch went, and he said, Jim's the guy we have to look at seriously for our next staff hire in small groups." And it's like, wow, that really took me back. And then looking at it, 5 months later, I was on staff.
Wow, that's an amazing transition, amazing story. Maybe there's somebody out there, you're working in business or in some field that's not ministry related. And Jim, you took that kind of walking out on water experience. And I know that it was working here was a major blessing for you and a major blessing for all the people you got to serve. So we're going to transition now to a little bit, the more serious and more important parts of your story. A big part of your story is you both were married and you lost your spouse. And Jim, I want you to start first. I want you to tell our listeners a little bit about Karen and a little bit about your marriage and a little bit about that loss. And
Yes, I was married for 42 years. We went through a cancer journey of ovarian cancer for 9 years, and I had an incredible marriage. First 15 years, I probably had a lot more to learn, but as I discovered things, I worked hard on some things, and the last 25 plus years, we just cruised, and had many friends that would say, "Jim, I can't believe your marriage. I would really like to have one like that." So I felt very, very blessed, going through that. Just really difficult time, but a time that I saw God, very much at work.
yeah. So Sharon, how about you? What's your story that kind of ties to that?
Well, I also experienced grief in losing my mates, plural. I lost the first one after 20 years to an unexpected, unwanted divorce. And then 7 years later, I remarried to another wonderful man, actually. And after 10 years, he passed away from cancer. So both times, as you can imagine, were pretty devastating, life-altering for both me and my children. But that was really a big time in my life where I just hunkered down into Scripture and found so much to help me, but especially in Isaiah 43, 18 to 19, a verse that was like Jesus was just standing there saying this to me when I thought, what am I supposed to do? What's next? Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wastelands. And that really was something I hung on to and realized that no person can be your central reason for living. People are all gifts. And it's just the Lord is the one who stays with us, who gives us purpose, meaning. And I knew he was still with me, would not leave me, and that he had new plans for me. Didn't know what they were, but that was the beginning of that. And I entered that life of singleness for the second time before I moved to Ada to be near my children.
And there was from when we met, there was a little part of your story after Ed passed away where you were like, I don't think I'm going to do that again.
Oh, yes. When I moved to Ada, it was with the total purpose of being Mimi to my grandchildren and mom to my kids, and just not ever, ever, ever consider remarrying, because it's just so much grief and so much adjustment. So the Lord knew my heart, and I told him in prayer I did not want to get remarried. I told all my friends, don't try to set me up with somebody. I was in my late 50s when Ed got sick, and I think he died when I was 59. So I thought, I don't care. I've had actually 2 good marriages. So, thank you, Lord, moving on. But then it was like the Holy Spirit got a hold of me and said, well, never tell me how things should go. Just always submit and be open. So I said, okay, Lord, I am open to what you have. But honestly, if it's marriage again, you're going to have to put this person right in my lap, put it very clear to me, because I'm not looking.
That is so funny. So Jim, so now we're at the part of the episode where we talk about how you fell in love, because as Sharon kind of alluded to, at the very least, you got to put him in my neighborhood, right?
Well, my lap. Kelly, I mean.
And so Jim, why don't you start that story, and how did you and Sharon? So Karen has passed away sadly, and
well, I did it's interesting. My grief journey is very much tied into my love journey with Sharon. It's really, it's really incredible. I would meet with guys, after I had done the funeral for their spouse, and just kind of pick their brain. How are you walking through this grief thing? How are you doing with that? And, I'd gone to the American Association of Christian Counselors conferences numerous times, took out breakout sessions, with grief. And I had books, and I would follow up with people, and I did a fair share of celebration of life services. And I would follow up, but nothing prepares you for going through it yourself. So about 4 months after Karen passed, and I met with several guys, I wanted to pick Sharon's brain, and I asked her if she would like to walk. She had become friends with a bunch of us where we live in the villas of Ada. She was actually a friend of Karen's. And so when we walked, I asked her a lot of questions. And one of the things that stands out to me that she stated was, Jim, during this time, you're going to learn to love Jesus like you never have. Mm. And that really proved to be so very true. And then, we'd walk a couple times a week, maybe 2 or 3 times, because she was at Maranatha for the summer. But when it came to fall time, it was like, something else is going on here. We both identified that. And kind of wild. And then, you transition to other things, that we're going to touch on shortly. But it was very, very neat process how God kind of worked through all that.
Sharon, what was your perspective during that time?
Well, it was interesting that before Karen passed, and I was watching those 2 thinking, I've just been through that journey, and I could see how well they were handling it, that difficult. So I was watching them and very impressed. But even before Karen got to the end there, God had put a restlessness in my heart. I told you how I was so set. This is what I'm doing. And I just thought, there's something else for me. I think anytime a Christian feels a little restless, we should wonder if that's from the Lord. What is it you're telling me? So I started praying about what kind of ministry he had for me. And nothing became real clear. I mean, was already volunteering and involving.
Well, it's neat, Sharon. You were connecting the wrestling to some ministry he might have in mind for you.
I felt like it was the Lord putting that in my heart. Like, what else is there for me? So then after we walked for a while and kind of felt encouragement to each other, I started thinking, I just wonder, way off if sometime this might turn into something. And I'd always enjoyed Jim. He was in a group of our friends, like he said, and was funny in the life of the party a lot of times, and both very social.
Well, it's neat because it started out as a friendship, and Jim knew he could reach out to you because you'd walked a similar road. He'd watched you trust God in the face of grief, and you could almost be his guide a little bit in that unique encouragement. We see that happening at Ada Bible all the time. People walking beside people who are where they were, and they know they've found God faithful there. So they're walking beside that one when they're just in the beginning stages of the journey. So, but something started brewing between the two of you. And did you have like a conversation at one point where you actually spoke it out loud?
Yes, the weather was getting cold.
Yes.
And we were trying to be very circumspect, stay out in the open all the time, and knew all the neighbors were watching what was going on.
After walking, we'd sit on the patio and talk.
Yeah, we'd stay out and we would sit in an open garage.
When it rained.
Yeah. And then we decided, maybe we could start having coffee or something. But Jim was on staff at that time. And we were aware, this is kind of close to his loss of Karen. Right away, we both had all these concerns.
You wondered, was it too soon?
That's exactly right.
Okay, and you wondered if people would wonder if it was too soon.
Yeah, we were conscious of being a model for people, for our children, for other people, watching us. We wanted to respect our friends who were still grieving Karen's loss, our children, especially Jim's children, and family members.
Yeah, that was huge. I tied right in with that. It's the same thing. I was looking at, wow, this is 6 months. Is this too quick? And am I honoring my Lord in this? Am I honoring my position on staff as a small groups pastor? Am I honoring the memory of Karen, who had an incredibly great marriage with? So, yeah, all those things were kind of coming to mind. And so, yeah, that was really a crucial part.
Jim, for
as
you,
we transition.
What for you, Jim, what kind of moved you forward?
There were a couple things that occurred. One at that point is I had a conversation with you, Kelly, and I had shared with you how Karen had remarkably, a year before she passed, talked to my daughter, just stating that, if when I'm gone, if God puts a lady in your dad's life, I want you to allow for that. And then 6 months later, and 6 months before she passed, she has this conversation with me. I didn't know she had talked to Jennifer. And it's like, I said, Karen, do you know how much interest I have in anybody and all the widows in our neighborhood and all? And I put my fingers up with a big 0, and that was really, really true. But it was, it was an incredible time that, just caused me to reflect. And then I talked to you, Kelly, and you said, Jim, do you realize the gift that Karen gave you? And I thought about that. Even reading a book, it talked about you don't need to be a martyr because you're not breaking vows. Your spouse is no longer here. So that was really, that helped me take another step and move forward.
Well, I think you guys have just such a unique story, and in both circumstances, you with the Isaiah verse, Sharon, we have to be careful of not putting God in a box. Okay, and you followed through with that, and now you're happily married, very much so, and God has redeemed that. But there's another important part of your story that I really liked, and I can actually remember you coming to me and telling me about this, and that is the 30-day sabbatical.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah. I had some grief counseling, almost immediately after Karen passed, with a lady that was very godly and very wise, Nancy Kingma, who specializes in grief counseling. And so, as we're moving along in this process, I was having a difficult time moving forward with Sharon, and it was some point, maybe around a year. It was very apparent that I was not done with my grief yet. We had a kind of a memorial around the graveside at year one, and I was a mess. And it was really, really difficult. And so shortly after that, I went and saw Nancy again. And she gave me some really wise words. And she said something to the effect, Jim, maybe you're having a difficult time moving forward in your relationship with Sharon because you have not fully grieved Karen. And maybe you're not fully able to grieve Karen because you have a relationship with Sharon. So she suggested maybe taking a 30-day sabbatical. And what was ironic is Sharon's sister-in-law 2 days before stated the same thing, and one of my closest friends 1 month before said, Jim, what is the rush? Take some time, take a break, and see where God might be leading you, if this is the real thing or not.
And that break was very important for me, too, because I was very wary of getting into the middle of Jim's grief, particularly with his children, his friends, and even him. I saw him still cry on and off, and I still cried once in a while about Ed, and it had been some years, but I just was very concerned about that. And I also wanted to make sure that I wasn't just a, quote, filler to replace Karen, because she was a lovely, lovely lady. But we are different, and I am me, and I have another family to involve here, and there are so many other things. And so that was a concern for me, and I could tell he just couldn't quite get past his grief yet. And it was fresh. I mean, it was a year.
Well, that just sounds like evidence of such wisdom, but also you were getting attached. So to give permission to let's push pause, and you go, invest in your grief journey, and entrusting that to the Lord, not knowing what the future would hold. That says a lot about you.
Yeah, we did not talk or text or anything. It was just really weird. We realized how attached we had become. And yeah, Jim broke it once, but
oh, fun.
It was funny.
Okay, so it was 29 and a half day sabbatical or something.
Day two, I'm driving home from the office, and I'm pulling up to the driveway, and there's Sharon with her 3 grandkids in a wagon, and here's little Oliver that comes charging up. Hi, Mr. Jim. And it's like, oh boy, here we are. Hi, Sharon. It's like, it was kind of awkward.
And then we met at the end of that, and that was actually awkward.
It was.
And I was very quiet because I thought, I want this man to talk. I want to hear if he really missed me. I really want him to declare, what he likes about me, what he wants, why he wants to get back with me, even though it was a planned breakup.
Yeah. That was kind of wild because I'm going on and on what I experienced. And we met at a restaurant, kind of a neutral place. And it was very quiet in the middle of the afternoon, nobody in there. And I'm rolling out what I had experienced, what I was going through, and how I missed her, et cetera. And I felt like, I told you earlier, I was in sales. I felt like I was doing quite a sales job here because I'm not getting any response from her. She's just listening, and it's like, oh boy. And I did have a little inside skinny from some mutual friends, but that
I missed him.
But still, she's really, you could tell she's really thinking through this, and rightly so. So, Yeah.
So you're saying Sharon should maybe go on the poker circuit?
Yeah, there you go. She did very well there. She wasn't tipping her
it was
hand, that's for
sincere.
sure.
And so Jim was squirming a little bit.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was. Okay, where's she coming from? But so we ended up, and then I had talked to Nancy further about this as we were moving along, and she said, I asked it, so after we're done with the 33 days is what it was, sabbatical, what do you think about us kind of re-engaging slowly? And she said, I think that'd be very appropriate, a couple times a year. And or a couple of times a week, couple times a year, yeah.
That was a slow takeoff. Yeah.
Couple times a week, and just kind of move into it, slowly again, and see where you go.
And Sharon, where did it go from there? Actually, to where you then get married.
Well, we continued. We just sort of felt a relief, like, okay, we know we're going to get together, but there wasn't like this major timeline. I did tell him once we got engaged, we were going to get married quickly. Once we knew that we had reached that point. And as it turned out, we had a 3-week engagement.
Yeah.
Kelly, I think that breaks a record of all the couples we've sat down with so
Definitely.
far. Okay,
So
just want to know
listeners,
that.
don't do that.
Yeah.
We knew each other, however.
Yes.
For a long time.
Actually, for quite a few years because of living in the neighborhood, too. And we
Yeah.
did a lot as 10, 12 of us together. So
Yeah. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, but we started doing these little trips and traveling together. It was expensive. We got a couple motel rooms, or I'd stay. But I know we went one trip. I remember we went to Traverse City, and I had been there a lot and enjoyed it. But it was a especially special place for Jim and Karen.
Mm.
So Jim's idea was, which was a great idea, we went there, and I stayed with some friends the first night. And he went and stayed at a motel where they often stayed, and went out to eat, didn't you, that night? And went, and walked around and looked at places he had been. Just sort of, I don't know, to just shed a few tears. You should just got through things.
yeah, I did surprisingly well with that, but it was maybe suggested that I visit some of those favorite places to kind of move through the grief. And I did that with the hotel, as Sharon mentioned, with an eatery that we used to like. Actually, some of the shops that, Karen used to like. And here's a guy walking into a women's store. It's like kind of bizarre, but, it was really helpful for me to process and say, you know what, I'm okay. I'm doing okay with this.
Jim, this morning I was speaking with a couple who lost their 40-year-old son to cancer. And one of the things I said to him is often when we go through grief, we try to distract ourselves to not really face it. And I hope it's at least a little bit coming out to our listeners that, I got to walk a little bit with that journey with you, and you did a deep dive in walking through your grief. And, you should, and I think listeners need to hear that. You can't just skim over things.
Yes.
And just that little anecdotal story about, revisiting those places that you and Karen so frequent, and that's really beautiful and a part of that journey.
I think another thing I really loved that Jim and I allowed each other was the fact that we listened to each other's grief and stories. I still had grief. I mean, you never get over losing someone you love. And you have to allow that person to still feel for them. Yeah. And so he could tell me stories, nice memories, or say, oh, I went here with Karen or did this or that, and I didn't feel bad. Or I would tell him something I had done with Ed that this reminded me of. And we combined our lives that way and let each other still have that person special to them.
I think that's... What you just said, Sharon, is so important. I think if you're going to get remarried after losing someone, because I think maybe some couples maybe in an unhealthy way don't allow for that. Like basically say, yeah, I don't really want to hear about your ex or your spouse that passed away. And it's so cool that you both engaged in that.
And we never compare, but we're free to talk about them. I wanted to share another thing that I remember doing with Sharon. The first year Karen passed, the end of March, I did not want to put up a Christmas tree. But Sharon was encouraging me to do that. So she said, I'll come over and I'll help you decorate it. So as we're doing that, we're halfway, 2/3 of the way through, and all of a sudden, Sharon gets all emotional, started crying. And I said, what's wrong? She says, I miss Karen, because she was her friend too. And it's like, and that gets me all weepy. And, but yeah, we were free to express that and not to belittle this when we start looking at something at 6 months. Every morning I would wake up for the first 2 months. I would cry my eyes out, but I would cry out my eyes to my Lord, and he would listen. He would hear.
So that is like what Sharon said, where you can expect to grow in your relationship with Jesus in this hard place.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, you made it to the altar, and you both mentioned that you have kids. Can you tell us a little bit about that wedding look like, and how the kids respond to you getting married to one another?
Well, we definitely talked to our kids when we were dating and asked them how they felt about it. And my kids wanted me to be very cautious of walking into the middle of his grief and to make sure, his family was okay. And I think we were trying to watch out for our kids a lot. And we told our grandchildren that this was Mr. Jim and Miss Sharon. We wanted to make it clear we weren't married. So we kind of kept that way. But we got married in his son's backyard with our family. And I think the most special thing about that day was we had Kevin Baker marry us outdoors there. Mm-hmm. And when he got up and said that the Lord had given him a special verse for us, and he read my verse, Isaiah 43:18-19, and we both looked at each other and started crying. Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up, do you not perceive it? I'm making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. And it was just such a beautiful confirmation that this was what God had for me, for us.
The word permission is a word coming to mind throughout our time with you, that you gave one another permission to still have pain, in saying goodbye to that one that you love so much. You weren't threatened by the other one's love for that other person. There was room for that. You sought the kids' permission when you got married. And so, you hear more permission here of giving God permission to do a new work in your life.
And it was 26 months after Karen's passing that we got married. And as Sharon mentioned, it was a 3-week engagement. Part of that would have been maybe a month and a half, but her daughter was planning on moving, and we out in California, so we needed to kind of move that up a few weeks.
So you got married, and then has anything been challenging?
No,
nothing.
We were perfect. We took personality tests with Kelly, and he said he'd never seen a couple so well suited. We laugh about that.
It was great. It was great. I remember that.
So what's been, let's look at some of the challenges of getting married again. What have been some things that you've learned along the way in those challenges too?
Well, I think I tend to be a strong person. I mean, I grew up with these 3 brothers. I've, raised kids on my own. I, was a career woman. I've been on my own a fair amount. And so I've sort of kept the strings and knew how to do all the finances, everything else. And like any marriage, had things that I did, even when I was married. These were my roles. These were yours. And then you marry someone and they have a whole different pattern, like, well, I like to do this too. Jim likes to decorate. I'm like, wait a minute, house decorating is totally my thing.
Oh, sure.
And so we've worked through making that almost a hobby and enjoying it together. But, stuff like that, just little things like that. And then I know for me, I really felt like taking that class, Respectfully Yours, even though I had been married twice before. It was a good, fresh reminder to me of the male viewpoint. What a man needs to feel like a man. So it was good for me as a reminder for this new marriage, so I could be a better life dance partner. I told Jim,
Sure,
with him.
Well, and Sharon, you're mentioning that Thrive short-term group, so that women's ministry short-term group opportunity, Respectfully Yours, where it's an opportunity to consider ways we can honor God in our role as a wife and love our husband well. And that was your heart.
Mm-hmm.
So Jim's been the beneficiary of all that. So, but what about you, Jim? What's been a little challenging?
For me, it's personality differences. And I have a friend that I used to meet with for 10 years that was what I'm going to call a processor. And Sharon's a processor. As we roll out situations or we interact with each other, ask each other questions and so forth, she tends to take a few minutes to think it through. Whereas in my situation, I process fairly quickly. I think it through, but I can have about 80% of what I'm thinking fairly quickly. So I've learned to be more patient, to listen, to communicate with her, make sure we're on the same page as far as hearing each other and so forth. So that's been something that, I continue to work on. Just kind of
Jim's very kind. I forget things. I don't hear things. I'm a single focus person, even though I'm kind of a woman multitasker. So that's my challenge, to learn to really listen and repeat what he says, write it down if it takes doing something. So,
well, I think it goes back to that personality test you guys took, and you're different people, and you're trying to navigate another person's personality. So with that, if you were to, and maybe you guys have already, but if you were to meet with a couple who is in a similar circumstance, they've lost their spouse, they want to get remarried, what would be some of the items that you would be like, okay, these are really important for you to focus on?
I would start with, don't be a martyr. That person you were married to is no longer alive. You are not breaking any vows. So, move forward cautiously, but move forward. I'd also talk to them about listening, about communication skills, about sensitivity to, the other person and hearing what they say and being patient.
Sharon, what about you?
Well, I like to bring up my wedding band with this because it's a very special thing that we thought through. It's a series of discs that has different diamonds from different times in both our lives. From Karen, from my mom's engagement ring, we changed the middle stone, but that was from Ed, money from that stone. And then we have two bands holding these discs together. And it's like we're putting all these circles that represent the parts of our lives together and making something new out of that. It's not totally new. It's who we are with all these past things put together and then a reformation of it. So that would be important for me to say to someone, make sure that you accept and love all those things from the past and bring it into your marriage, including family. I find it easy to love Jim's family, fortunately. But, when and if either of us would have something to say about a person, a sister-in-law, a brother-in-law, and someone's family, you have to remember those are people that person loves. You're the latecomer. And I think that's true in not just a remarriage, any marriage. So being gracious about family members and loving on the other person's grandchildren, trying to combine things when you can. I've learned it through Ed. We learned it took 5 to 7 years for a blended family to feel a little more relaxed and like this is who we are.
So good. So Jim, Sharon is a really, really good writer. And I pulled some of my notes from some of the things she shared with me, and I want you guys to talk about this last one because it's a very nuanced issue, but I thought, wow, that's really insightful. Sharon wrote, with our later in life marriage, we have found it helpful financially to have a combined account for our spending and giving to which we each add monthly. Otherwise, past assets are kept separately in trust for our children. We have made our children aware of our plans. Talk to me, we can't get away from the fact that there are finances involved with remarriage, and you guys have taken, I think, now somebody could take a different angle at it, but I thought you guys took a really wise angle at that. Just for a few minutes, talk about that.
Yeah, to hear some of the why behind that.
Yeah. Well, we both brought pretty close to the same amount of assets and so forth into the marriage. However, we both decided we want to be above reproach. And so we talked to a lawyer on this and so forth. So that's how we came up with that idea. We have a common checking account where we operate and our Social Security checks go in there. And then based on how we spend and what we do on trips, et cetera, at the end of the month when that visa bill is due, we put an equal amount in together to handle our expenses.
And our Social Security checks go into that common account to start with. Yep. So that's our operating fund. And I think it draws us together. Even when our giving, we decide together what groups, what people to give to. And that's a good thing. We pray about it and brings us together. The only time we do separate things if we want to do a special gift to a family member or something like that.
That's great. It's a like I said, it's a nuanced topic within remarriage, but especially if for couples who are kind of getting remarried later in life, this financial thing has to be kind of talked about. And when Sharon wrote about it, I thought, you know what? Some of our listeners need to hear that.
Yeah. And, it's obvious that God brought you together and you came to this marriage with a deep faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. Since getting married, how would you say you've experienced God? Like, is there some quality of God that comes to mind that you've experienced in him in this new marriage?
I love the fact that God redeems. He redeems pain. He redeems grief. And he can make something new again. And, it's interesting. Had a wonderful relationship, as I mentioned earlier, but you know what? You can love. You can love again. It's just different, and it can be a good different. And that's the really cool thing. I love how God orchestrates and works. And he knew this for years and years and years. And he's with you moment by moment as you seek him. He will be found. And so that to me is that's powerful. And yeah, I love that part.
That is powerful. Thank you for sharing that with us, Jim. It's different and it can be a good different, you said. That'll stick with people, stick with me. How about you, Sharon?
Well, I agree. I think we both had a deep faith, and that's a big thing that drew us together. So I think that still continues. We both have our own personal chair time. But we do pray together, and we do talk about things sometimes and encourage one another in a certain direction. Oh, you can't do that because think, what that says about, we sort of guard each other's hearts and actions that way. So, but we certainly have the same prayer requests and in Respectfully Yours, that class, and in other ways too, I've realized how much I need to pray for Jim, instead of just going over and over in my mind, oh, there's that same old thing again, that annoys me or whatever. It's a prayer thing, and see what God does. And then it's really cool to hear Jim say, I was thinking about this. This really bothers me. I want to talk to you about this. And I'm like, oh, here we are talking about that because he felt the Spirit bring that to him. And I know my heart isn't right. So I like that, how we're not settled without coming together on things.
And
Well, go ahead, Jim.
okay, I was just going to say, to add what Sharon stated there, which is so big, and just to kind of expound it a little more, is we do life and you run into situations. Counsel and wisdom from each other, because we both seek God. We both want to honor God in our things. To be able to bounce things by each other and talk about it, it's like, that is like really, really big, because as we are honoring our God, it's how you interact with people, and it's how you work through difficult circumstances that are so crucial, because you want to reflect the love of Christ as you're doing that. So I love being able to bounce those things back and forth with each other and think them through and then come to an agreement on things.
What fits what I was going to say too, that it seems like you've really experienced God as your counselor and your teacher and all those things in this new relationship.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, I think we've talked about it in past episodes, especially to those who are dating. It's so important to find a spouse who, if you're in a place where you want to go deep with your relationship with God, it's so vital to find a spouse who's in that same place. And not everybody is, and that's that part where it takes time to figure out, is this person in the same space as I am when it comes to my relationship with God? So this time has been so amazing with you guys. To kind of finish up here, I want you just each to talk about one or two things that you just really love about the other person and are just so grateful for them to be in your life right now. Jim, why don't you go first?
I totally love how Karen, oh my, there you go.
We also forgive each other for doing that.
And there's permission for that too.
There is permission. We laugh about it.
Oh my, it's crazy. Even after all these years.
We are not going to edit that out.
I think it's glad that you did that.
Because we've done that more than a couple times.
Come on. Their names are so similar.
Close.
Yeah. And I have no excuse, but I can still do it too.
So I love how Sharon moves into relationships. She has so much impact in the lives of her ladies and Thrive. Our friends, they love her to death. Our family, they love Mimi. You don't know what that does for me. That I love the fact that they do, and the relationship that she's forged with them, just really, really big. I love the fact that she cares for me too and loves on me, and just the great relationship we have with each other. It just continues to get better and better and better. And I believe that we as a couple are so much better together. And I was telling her before this podcast, just affirming her in so many things and how much I appreciate her. And I feel like a very blessed man.
Awesome, Jim. Sharon?
Well, I like Jim because he's fun.
We can attest to that.
Yes. He likes to sing and laugh. He brings a lot of joy in my life. He's a great encourager. He's also very relational. The grandkids are saying always, "Oh, Grandpa's talking to someone again." He knows so many people, but I do like that. He expands my world in a lot of ways, has brought a lot into my life, and I'm super thankful for his family. I really do enjoy the children, their spouses, and the grandchildren are just over the top special. In fact, I can get teary sometimes thinking that I am the grandma for them, because I think about Karen, and I feel like I'm doing that because I love it, but trying to think this is what these little girls need. Because I've added 5 little girls to my cachet through Jim. And then I love that he has a servant's heart. He's a real server. He's a great support to me and everything, just everyday life and on and on. And
well, when you just see them across the atrium, you just see you two have such a deep love for one another and for the Lord. And it's just been an honor to become your friend. and to get to know you. So thank you so much for stepping into this podcast opportunity. This is a Together podcast, and we would love for you to share this. You know, you've heard it and encouraged you. We'd love for you to share it with a friend. And just thank you again, Jim, Sharon, for spending this time with us. And thank you for listening. We'll see you on our next podcast.
Thanks for listening to Together. We hope you've learned a thing or two. If you find the podcast helpful, please go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your listening platform, leave a comment, and give us a 5-star rating. If you'd like more information on Ada Bible Church and its ministries, or someone to pray or dialogue with about your marriage, go online and check